Okay, so we all think we know the deal with our phone batteries or EV batteries.
Yeah.
You know, don't overcharge them.
Right. That's the standard advice.
But what if I told you there's this other thing, something maybe even more important that most of us are completely overlooking?
Ah, you must mean that new study coming out of South Korea.
Exactly, from Pohang University of Science and Technology and Sungkyunkwan University, too.
Yeah, they've really zeroed in on something pretty unexpected with lithium-ion batteries. Well, it does challenge some common thinking about what makes them degrade.
Okay, this sounds like it could be a pretty big deal for, well, basically everyone with a battery-powered device. So what's the headline finding? The main point?
The core discovery really is that letting your lithium-ion battery run all the way down, hitting empty, deep discharge,
Yeah.
that seems to have a much more significant negative effect on its long-term health than we maybe gave it credit for. It's not just about avoiding the top end.
Interesting. Because you just assume using the whole battery capacity is, well, what it's designed for. So what's the simple takeaway? Like the practical advice for us?
Well, their recommendation, based on all this, is surprisingly simple. Don't use your battery until it runs out. Basically, try not to let it die completely.
Just avoid the red zone.
Exactly. That little shift, especially for EVs, could potentially make a real difference in battery lifespan.
Okay, avoid hitting zero. Got
Yeah.
it. But what's actually happening inside the battery? Why does getting that low cause this extra wear and tear? What did they figure out?
So what's really fascinating is their focus on the cathode. One of the
Okay.
battery's main terminals, positive and negative.
Right.
The cathode's one of those. And when you charge or discharge these tiny things, ions, they move back and forth between the terminals through this liquid called the electrolyte.
Okay.
The surprise was that the damage they saw, it happens during just normal use, specifically when the battery voltage gets low, like around 3 volts, near empty.
So it's not some catastrophic failure when it hits 0%.
No.
It's happening as it gets close.
Precisely. It's more gradual. What they observed is, at that lower voltage, oxygen atoms actually start to kind of escape from the cathode's surface.
Oxygen escaping inside the battery.
Yeah. And these escaped oxygen atoms then react with the lithium that's also in there, and they form lithium oxide.
Lithium oxide. Sounds like something you don't want floating around in there.
You don't. Because this lithium oxide then reacts with the electrolyte, that liquid again, and this reaction creates gas inside the battery cell.
Gas. Inflating it.
Exactly. That gas buildup is a major cause of battery decay. They even had this photo, it was pretty striking, showing a battery cell all puffed up and swollen from the gas,
Wow.
right next to a normal, flat, healthy one. It really paints a picture of the physical damage happening. It suggests we need to think about both ends of the charge cycle, not just the top.
That image of a bloated battery. Yeah, that definitely makes the point. Now, I think the article mentioned this might be worse for certain battery types. Something about the chemistry.
Yes, that connects back to the material science side. The research indicated this whole oxygen-escaping, gas-forming problem. It was more pronounced in cathodes with more nickel compared to cobalt.
Ah, nickel versus cobalt.
Oh,
That comes up a lot, usually about cost, right?
Yeah.
Nickel's cheaper.
Generally, yes. More nickel can bring down costs and often boosts energy density too, so more range for an EV.
But there's a catch.
Well, this study points to a potential trade-off. These high-nickel batteries might be more prone to this gassy issue when they're run down low. It could shorten their lifespan.
So the swelling gets worse as they empty, especially the high nickel ones.
That's what the report noted, yes. So it seems there's this balancing act, between cost, performance, and how robust the battery is long-term, particularly regarding how you use it.
Okay, so this advice, don't run it empty, might be extra important depending on what kind of battery is actually in your EV. Did they have numbers, like data showing how much difference it actually makes?
They did, and it's quite dramatic, actually. They tested high nickel packs, but under controlled conditions where they didn't let them drain completely all the time.
Yeah.
Those maintained over 73% of their original capacity after 300 cycles, which is, pretty decent degradation.
Okay.
But then they compared that to what they called tired cells batteries that were repeatedly run down low. After just 250 cycles, those held only 3.8% of their starting capacity.
Wait, 3.8% after fewer cycles.
3.8. It's a massive difference. It really underscores how damaging that deep discharge can be, at least for these specific types of cells under these conditions.
Wow, that's a huge gap.
Yeah.
Okay, stepping back a bit then, what does this mean more broadly for EVs, for battery tech in general?
Well, it offers a really valuable insight for making batteries even better. We're always seeing improvements, right? Faster charging, more range.
Sure.
But this points to another way to potentially extend their lifespan significantly. And longer-lasting batteries are just crucial for making EVs more practical and more sustainable.
Makes sense.
And also for things like grid storage, storing solar and wind power effectively. It's not just a little tweak. It impacts the bigger picture of our energy transition.
Absolutely. And didn't the article also touch on some wider benefits? Environmental, even health-related.
It did, yeah. By helping batteries last longer and maybe encouraging more EV adoption, this kind of research indirectly helps cut down air pollution.
Fewer emissions.
Right. The article mentioned an average EV avoids thousands of pounds of exhaust each year compared to a gas car. And they linked that pollution to things like lung problems, even cognitive issues. It's all connected.
It really shows how one technical advance can ripple outwards. The article also had that quick poll, didn't it, about why people choose an EV. What stood out there?
Yeah, that was interesting. They asked people for their top priority. And maybe not surprisingly, cost and battery range were the big winners. Figures.
Though power and speed and looks got some votes too, people care about different things, obviously.
Yeah, that tracks with what you hear. And the article also mentioned the money side, right? Potential savings.
That's right. They threw out a figure of potential savings of maybe $1,500 a year on gas and maintenance versus a gasoline car.
That's significant.
Plus, the tax credits up to $7,500 federally, which can definitely help with the upfront cost.
So just by being a bit more careful about not running the battery totally dead, you could potentially help it last longer, maybe help the environment a tiny bit, and possibly save some cash. It sounds like what Professor Hong said in the article was spot on. This is an important direction for developing longer-lasting batteries.
It really seems to be. And just to show it's not only about huge EV batteries, the article briefly mentioned another study, University of Texas, I think,
Oh, yeah.
finding that things like temperature swings and just how you use them affect battery life, even in tiny things like wireless earbuds.
Huh. So usage habits matter across the board. It reinforces that idea, yeah. How we treat our batteries definitely impacts how long they stick around.
Okay, so wrapping this up then,
Mhm.
what's the biggest takeaway from this deep dive? The one thing people should really remember?
I think the key message is just how surprisingly important it seems to be to avoid fully draining lithium-ion batteries. This research really suggests that hitting 0% consistently, especially with EVs, might be doing more harm than we realized. It could be shortening the battery's useful life quite a bit.
It really is almost counterintuitive, isn't it? We've hammered home the don't overcharge message for so long.
Right.
But it turns out how we use the bottom end of the charge, those last few percent, is also a really critical factor. Something the researchers themselves said has been kind of overlooked. It definitely changes how I think about charging things.
Absolutely. And it leaves us with a good question for you listening. Knowing this now, does it change how you might charge your phone, your laptop? Or if you have an EV or thinking about one, does this factor into your habits? It makes you wonder what other common knowledge about batteries might get updated as we learn more and how that shapes our move towards cleaner energy.